Hi everybody, this is Megan Garza with Megan Garza Wellness. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner, health coach, and yoga instructor, and you're listening to the Restoring Balance podcast. More women than ever are now dealing with digestive, hormonal, and skin issues and are not finding satisfactory answers or results. On this show, I teach you how to implement holistic lifestyle, dietary, and mindset strategies to help you get smooth digestion and balanced hormones to reclaim your health, feel confident about your decisions, and to finally live life on your terms. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 30, and the title of today's episode is Nervous System Regulation and the Digestive System. Before we get into today's episode, if you're a fan of the show, don't forget to give it a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify podcasts, which helps my show get to other listeners who would benefit from it just like you. Without further ado, let's dive in. The main topics that I'm going to be covering today are the two branches of the autonomic nervous system, what a dysregulated nervous system looks like and how it shows up in the body and the mind, how nervous system dysregulation happens and what leads up to it, how all of this pertains to digestion, and lastly, habits to improve nervous system flexibility. So to start out, we're going to talk about the autonomic nervous system. It is made up of two branches, the sympathetic nervous system, the SNS, and the parasympathetic nervous system, the PNS. So the sympathetic nervous system is responsible for fight or flight, and the parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for rest and digest. So these are mechanisms that have been in place since the beginning that humans have evolved to keep us safe and protected from danger. So at times when it's appropriate, the autonomic nervous system is going to be more sympathetic dominant, or it's going to be more parasympathetic dominant, really depending on the situation. And for many of us who are in a state of chronic stress and burnout, these signals end up getting confused and we end up more sympathetic dominant, which is a complete recipe for disaster. So the devil really is in the details, because too much of one way can really lead to a ton of issues. And I typically see more sympathetic nervous system dominance than parasympathetic nervous system dominance in my practice, but it is possible to be more parasympathetic dominant. But many people who are under chronic stress, again, I'm going to repeat it, are more sympathetic dominant. This happens because when the body is under an extreme amount of stress for a long time, or it's repeated, the body is going to release more cortisol and adrenaline. And this is going to keep the body and the mind more hypervigilant. And at this point, it's unreasonable for you to expect yourself to keep up with life flawlessly. And this is when health problems arise. So I'm really trying to focus on balance here and to really help you understand that nervous system flexibility is super important, and not just focusing on trying to be parasympathetic all the time, because that is not realistic. It is not healthy for us. We need to have nervous system flexibility and our ability to switch from sympathetic to parasympathetic when it's appropriate, and to switch these off per se when it is necessary, because our bodies and minds do not need to be in a state of hypervigilance and stress all the time. And this can happen from being overworked. And we don't need to be sympathetic dominant from responding to an email or rushing to and from places, because that is going to lead to so many more problems in the body. Again, it's going to lead to chronic stress and burnout overall. So that leads me on to my next point, like, what does a dysregulated nervous system look like? So the first thing that comes to mind for me would be a hyper awareness to your surroundings. So this could even look like sensitivity to lights or to certain sounds. Maybe you're startling easily, and overall your body is just going to feel super sensitive to everything, and you're going to feel like there's danger all around. The next thing would be struggling to be present. This could look different for a lot of people, but mostly you're going to be stuck in the past. So maybe ruminations about something that happened in the past, or you're constantly worrying about the future, and your ability to just be present in the moment and enjoy the little things and the day-to-day things that happen in life is just going to be lacking, or it's just going to be non-existent when your nervous system is dysregulated. Maybe you're even always daydreaming. So you just feel like you're kind of spaced out and you're just daydreaming about stuff because you can't stay present. So that kind of goes hand in hand with that. A physical symptom of this would be fluttering heartbeat, or your heart is skipping beats. Of course, this could be a very serious medical issue that really needs to get checked out if this is something that's been ongoing. But it could also just be from a dysregulated nervous system because your body is reacting physiologically to perceived stress that may or may not be there, and it's causing your heartbeat to react accordingly to what it thinks is happening. And then the last couple symptoms that could arise from this would be feeling like you're just going through the motions of the day. Like, say that you went to work and you got all your stuff done, you dropped the kids off, picked them up, made dinner, came home, laid on the couch, and you just did not enjoy any of it. And you really can't even remember what happened throughout the day, and you feel like you're just going through the motions. So this is a huge sign of a dysregulated nervous system that really needs some attention brought to it, because that kind of goes with being unable to be present with your body and your surroundings and just day-to-day life. And with all that being said, a dysregulated nervous system does not happen overnight. So it's not like you're fine one day and then you wake up the next and your entire nervous system is just completely dysregulated. So it's typically caused by a plethora of events that happen and has a compounding effect on the mind and the body. So this can be because of childhood trauma, or maybe you've lost a loved one recently, or even in the distant past and you have never really worked through it. Or maybe you've experienced chronic work stress or chronic stress from family issues, or maybe even overstimulation from always doing stuff, or even just device usage, because when you're always on your device and tablets and screens, it's going to cause overstimulation and it can lead to a dysregulated nervous system. Also, things like a traumatic relationship can cause your nervous system to become dysregulated, and even chronic illness, because at its core, chronic illness is quite often related to a dysregulated nervous system. On top of all of the other things that happen, the nervous system work is something that needs to be done for pretty much every single chronic illness. So with all those things that I just mentioned, it has a tipping point because it doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, you don't wake up and just say, wow, my nervous system is dysregulated. This is usually caused over time, and it's a compounding effect that happens over a long period of time of experiencing these stressors. And typically when someone either has a nervous breakdown or they just feel like they cannot handle it anymore and they really feel like something is seriously wrong, that's typically because of an event that I would like to refer to as the straw that broke the camel's back. So it's not just one thing. It is usually a multitude of different things that you have experienced or are currently experiencing that leads to the nervous system being dysregulated. Which brings me to my next point of gastrointestinal issues. So again, with chronic illness, same thing with gastrointestinal issues. At its core, it is a symptom of nervous system dysregulation. And you see this especially in cases with gastroparesis, which is the paralysis of the stomach and the intestines. And this is where patients will typically vomit up food. And it's a very unfortunate thing, but a lot of it does boil down to nervous system dysregulation. And I personally knew someone who had gastroparesis for many years, very, very sick, very ill. And it was not until they actually started addressing their nervous system that things started to improve for them. And they actually were able to have normal digestion and bowel movements and actually eat food like you should be doing and you should be able to do, which goes to show you just how important this work truly is. And I also say that GI issues are also a symptom of nervous system dysregulation, because the nervous system, when it flips over to the sympathetic nervous system, that means that the body is in fight or flight. It is going to halt digestion, so it's either going to slow it down or even completely stop it, because the body and the brain is not going to register that this email that you have chosen to respond to or look at is not a life or death threat when your mind is not actually registering that. So your mind is going to say, oh my gosh, this is really scary. My boss is asking me to do this, or I'm being, threatened at my job to be fired, or whatever the case may be. Your body and your brain does not acknowledge that it is not truly a life or death situation. It's just going to see that this is something that is really scary, and now it's my time to shut off digestion and to focus all of my energy on fight or flight. And this is when these issues really start to arise again, when I said it becomes chronic and recurrent. This is when problems really start to happen, because if we not hit the brakes on this and say like, hey, listen, body, this is not a fight or flight situation. It's okay to relax, and we don't employ strategies to help our bodies and brains acknowledge these things, that it is safe, digestion is going to be put on the back burner. And all of this does go back to the gut-brain connection. So this is the process when your brain talks to your gut and your gut talks to your brain. So it does this through nerves, and it passes information to each other via your nervous system. And a really interesting fact is that there are more nerve cells in your gut than anywhere else in your body outside of your brain, which is super cool. And it goes to show you just how intelligent the gut is, so to speak. Also, another really cool thing is when you get that gut feeling, that goes back to the gut-brain connection, and why you should always listen to your gut feeling if you feel like something is off, or you just have a feeling about something not quite being right. It's probably accurate. And this process evolved back in the day to help us understand if we ate something that we shouldn't have eaten, or if we need to run from a predator and halt digestion. But again, in our modern world, we are typically not running from a tiger or something scary that is a life-threatening danger. So being in a state of chronic sympathetic dominance is really going to lead to a ton of issues. According to my Cleveland Clinic, the gut-brain connection affects everything from hunger and satiety to food preferences and cravings to food sensitivities and intolerances, and even gut motility, your metabolism, your mood, your behavior, your stress levels, even pain sensitivity, your cognitive function, and immunity. So there are really a ton of processes that the gut-brain connection affects, which is why it's so important to really pay attention to this and to understand the role that the nervous system plays in all of this. And I want to briefly talk on two more aspects of the nervous system related to digestion. So you have the enteric nervous system and the vagus nerve. The enteric nervous system is a neural network that operates within your gastrointestinal tract, and it controls digestive functions. So it operates independently of your central nervous system and brain. Then also with the vagus nerve, this controls functions like respiration, heart rate, and digestion, which is why vagus nerve exercises can be incredibly helpful for managing symptoms of gastrointestinal discomfort and even illnesses. And all of this relates back to the gut microbiome as well, because the microbes contain neurotransmitters that influence the gut-brain connection. So dysfunction in the nervous system can directly influence the onset or exacerbation of conditions like irritable bowel syndrome, gastroparesis, and even anxiety and depression and chronic pain and indigestion. So do not overlook the importance of the nervous system when you are trying to manage your digestive system more efficiently and naturally, because the nervous system plays an enormous role in how your digestive system is functioning, and it is a foundational aspect of actually improving your digestion. And I also want to mention that if you've been struggling with your digestive health, I do have a free webinar that details everything that you need to know about gut health with simple yet powerful foundations to help you build your game plan. I cover the function of digestion, what causes dysfunction, the ways to bring back proper function, and everything in between, like sleep, stress management techniques, which foods you should incorporate, which ones you should avoid, how hydration impacts your digestion, and the nervous system's role in digestive function and dysfunction, and so much more. So if you've been struggling with digestive dysfunction and you want to reduce your symptoms of gas, bloating, heartburn, constipation, or diarrhea, you need to watch this webinar. I will put the link in the show notes for your convenience. The nervous system's ability to be flexible and to handle stress is paramount in healing and health overall. But I do want to mention that stress is ultimately necessary for survival at the right levels and durations. So this is what is known as the allostatic load, which is the wear and tear on the body, which adds up as you're exposed to repeated or chronic stress. Big stressors that are going to contribute to allostatic load and can potentially overload it would be environmental stressors. This would be home stressors, work stressors, or even loneliness. Then you would have physiological stressors. So these would be sleep issues, things like chronic pain, and even diet or digestion. Those can all contribute to your allostatic load. And lastly would be trauma or life events. So if you've recently gone through a divorce, or if you've lost your job, or if you've experienced the death of a loved one, these can wear and tear on the body. So this perceived stress is going to potentially trigger a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. So the fight is exactly what it sounds. You're going to get in there and you're going to fight and just do everything that you can to get out of it. The flight is when your body says, nope, we are not doing this. We are going to leave, and it's going to hightail it out of there. And the freeze response is where your body basically just locks up and it cannot do anything. And it just kind of submits to what is happening. And then the little known fawn response is what happens more so with trauma when you become more codependent and you try to please whatever is happening to reduce any further harm or danger to yourself. So all of the stressors that I just mentioned of the environmental, physiological, or trauma or life events, these can add to the allostatic load. So these major stressors can cause the bucket to quote unquote overflow and to really cause like either a nervous breakdown or just for your body to say, I cannot handle anymore. And this is when symptoms start to arise. So things like acne, eczema, digestive discomfort, digestive dysfunction, hormonal imbalances, sleep problems, like all of these can become amplified when the bucket starts to overflow. So with general stress, these are just typical stresses that you encounter, and it should be totally fine for your body to be able to just manage them properly. If your nervous system is in a healthy state, they will be dealt with no problem. So it's healthy to have some amount of stress, but your body needs to be able to manage it properly. And when you've been under a state of chronic or recurrent stress, your body is not going to understand how to handle this, and everything is going to feel like a mountain, even though it is an anthill. I don't want you to feel like stress is something that you should never feel. You should never have any kind of stress in your life, and everything should just be carefree and just rainbows and sunshine all the time, because that is not a realistic view of the world, and that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm trying to say is that your nervous system needs to be flexible, so that way when you encounter these stressors, it is able to navigate through them much better for your body and your mind to not become overwhelmed with these things. Now, of course, with major life events and traumas and just other things with work, home, chronic pain, like, of course, these things can be overwhelming, and your body is not always going to know how to handle them. And your nervous system is potentially going to say, like, hey, this is too much for me. But this is where the tools and habits that I'm going to talk about in just a moment that you can utilize is really going to help you navigate through these situations much better, rather than just fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I say this about the stress and how your body needs stress for a reason, because it's easy to fall into that all or nothing trap. And when you first hear this, you might think like, oh, well, I need to just relax all the time, and I'm never going to put my body under any kind of stress. And this can lead to doing nothing and to never putting our body under any amount of stress. And this is when you could encounter a stressful situation that is something so minor and your nervous system has lost the ability to be flexible. And when you encounter these stressors, your body could just go into total panic mode of hypervigilance and just saying like, oh my God, what do I do? I haven't had to deal with any kind of stress in a very long time, because you thought that it was okay to just completely eliminate all stressors in your life. And this is when a lot more problems happen. So this is why I always talk about balance on my podcast, because balance really is the key to health. We cannot be too dogmatic about one thing without causing issues in another area. And going back to what I said a moment ago about how if you are dealing with a major life event or a trauma or serious issue at work or something with your kids or just something really major, I also want to remind you that it is okay to be dysregulated at times. So when you're angry or frustrated or really stressed, you should not be trying to force yourself to regulate your nervous system and just be zen and to never feel these things, because that is going to bottle these emotions up and it's going to repress them and make it so much worse. So sometimes it is okay to just be dysregulated and to feel like a disaster, as long as you are able to pull yourself out of it and to not get stuck in it. Because we don't need to stay calm all the time. We are human beings and we ebb and flow and we shift with our emotions. So there's no need to really get rid of them or pretend that they don't exist, because this is going to also have consequences. But on the other hand of this, being constantly dysregulated is also going to have pretty significant consequences as well. So if your nervous system is dysregulated and you are always lashing out or you're lacking the ability to manage stressors, this is an indicator that your nervous system needs some serious attention. And just to clarify, that being calm is not the same thing as regulating your nervous system. Being calm is just a fleeting state of tranquility, whereas a regulated nervous system is going to help you adapt to life's stressors efficiently. So that's what I mean when I say being flexible. We have to be connected with how we feel in our ability to stay present. So the flexibility of the nervous system is what is ultimately going to give us the ability to adapt effectively and efficiently to stressors that life throws at us. And real quickly, I do want to just briefly touch on some of the habits that can cause issues with your nervous system and causing dysregulation that are not commonly thought of, but it can happen. The first thing that I think of would be fasting. So fasting in of itself is not a terrible thing, but when you are already under a lot of stress and when you have low thyroid function, fasting can cause a dip in your blood sugar, which is going to lead to more issues with your nervous system. Cold plunging is also something that can put your nervous system in a state of stress, which is what we are trying to avoid right now. If you are dealing with a severely dysregulated nervous system, you do not want to dysregulate it even more than it currently is. Also, eating junk food can cause the nervous system to be dysregulated because you need the essential nutrients and amino acids and vitamins and minerals and all the good things that nutrient-dense food has. If you are not getting that, it is not supplying your nervous system with the nutrients that it needs to be able to be flexible. Another huge issue that I really see is just always keeping busy. So if you are in a state of constantly doing, once again, this is going to put stress on your nervous system. It is going to keep your body in a state of hyper awareness, and it is not going to give your body any time to relax. So once again, we need balance in our lives in order to thrive. Another thing that I see is people pleasing. So people pleasing really comes from a root of shame, of not wanting to let people down. So trying to work through this and to figure out where people pleasing comes from, because you are doing yourself a disservice by trying to please everyone. Because the saying goes, if you try to please everyone, you will end up pleasing no one. Which is why it's super important to figure out where people pleasing comes from, even if you have to go through some kind of therapy or read books on people pleasing or even Instagram posts. There are so many wonderful trauma therapists and even just therapists in general who talk about people pleasing on podcast and on Instagram. I would highly suggest that you check that out and truly understand why people pleasing can be so detrimental to your health, because by never saying no and just doing everything for everyone is going to cause so many issues for your body in the long run. And a little known one that most people are probably unaware of is eating distracted. So if your nervous system is in a state of sympathetic dominance, like when you are driving or when you are watching TV or even having an argument with someone, God forbid, and you are eating, your nervous system does not feel safe, and it is going to slow digestion down. It's going to put digestion on the back burner and say, okay, well, this isn't really that important. Clearly, there's something much more important right in front of me, like this traffic light or this person that I'm yelling at right now, and I don't really need to digest my food. So making sure that you are eating in a state of relaxation is going to help with nervous system regulation and your digestion. So those are all the things that can potentially cause further issues with your nervous system, and avoiding them or even minimizing them is going to make a big difference. But now I want to talk about how to regulate your nervous system and some of the tools that you can utilize in order to do this. EFT, or emotional freedom technique, otherwise known as tapping, is something that I have recently started using within the past couple of months, and I have noticed such a big difference. At first, I was very skeptical of it. I thought that it was just kind of another scam and something else that someone was trying to sell me on that really wasn't going to work. And I started doing it and noticing profound results with how I felt in my body and some of the hypervigilance and flashbacks that I would have starting to minimize, which was very interesting because it has been something that I've dealt with for probably over a decade. And I did not realize just how powerful that tapping was. And it was so amazing to find something that worked. And I started doing some research on PTSD and EFT, and there's a huge connection between how helpful EFT truly is. So if this is something that you have been dealing with, I would highly suggest that you try EFT. It does not happen overnight, and it is something that you have to practice because it's not going to be perfect on the first try, and it's never going to be perfect, but you're not going to get results on the first try. That's like changing your diet for one day and then saying, well, this didn't work, so I'm just going to scrap the whole idea. You have to stick with it. And a fantastic resource for this is Teresa on Instagram, Living Roots Wellness. She has so many wonderful posts on EFT and how it helps with digestion. And I mean, I've been looking at her work and I've just been blown away with how comprehensive it is and how helpful that it truly is. And her story is also just very inspiring. And I highly suggest that you check out her work if you are looking into doing EFT. Something else that can really regulate your nervous system is taking deep belly breaths throughout the day. So most of us are chest breathers just because of how we've been raised and how we really haven't been taught much of anything about our bodies. And our posture impacts how we're breathing, also where we place our tongue on the roof of the mouth. This can also impact it. So taking deep breaths throughout the day and making sure that your posture is setting you up for success for this. So you're not slumped over, you're not breathing into your chest. Really taking deep belly breaths is going to make a huge difference because this tells your body and it sends signals to your nervous system that it is safe to relax and it is safe for the nervous system to shift to parasympathetic state. Also, body work is something that is very foundational and very helpful for a lot of people. So for me personally, I love massages. I have figured out that I really enjoy getting a massage, and I did not think that I would. I tried acupuncture, and that was something that did not work for me. I have trauma around needles and medical trauma, so that was just, I tried very hard for months, and it was just a hard no. It was a no from me, and as much as I tried, I was just forcing myself to relax, and it's very helpful for some people, and I am not knocking acupuncture by any means. I think that it is a very foundational tool for those who it does not trigger. But for me personally, I preferred massages. This body work and massages in general is something that I have found so helpful. I even do acupressure. So if you don't do well with needles, you can even just do acupressure. So if that's something that you're interested, I would highly suggest finding a massage therapist who works specifically with the issues that you are having. So if you're having issues with anxiety or chronic pain or even trauma or psoas release or whatever you are trying to work towards, find someone who specializes in that, because I've tried the corporate places like Hand and Stone and whatever those other corporate places are that hire different massage therapists. I was just never happy with them. So I was much more pleased with finding someone at a small scale little business who has their own massage therapy practice, and he has done fantastic work. If you are in the Gainesville, Florida area, his name is Craig at Orange Blossom Massage. I would highly suggest that you check out his work because he has completely changed my life and how my body feels. I had so much tension before I started going to see him, and the work that massage therapy does to your body is just fantastic. I've never experienced anything like it until I started getting regular massages. So if you are having issues with your nervous system, I would highly suggest massage therapy. Some really simple, easy things that you can do that do not cost money, like massage therapy, would be simple techniques like rubbing your fingers underneath your earlobes. So there's a little groove behind your jaw, right beneath your earlobe, and this is where you are going to rub. You can do this right after your meals, right before you eat. Even humming. Humming is very helpful for your nervous system, so if you do this simultaneously, this can improve your digestion, and it just makes your body feel so relaxed. And I would highly suggest this before you eat if you are having issues with digestion. Another technique would be grounding. So not only going outside and putting your bare feet on the earth, but I'm also just talking about grounding where you currently are. So this can include just sitting in your chair, putting your feet flat on the ground, taking deep breaths, and just being present of how your body feels in this moment. Notice if there's any tension, any tightness, and just breathe into that place and try to acknowledge that it is there for a reason, and letting yourself know that it is okay to relax and that it is safe to relax. Dancing and shaking or bouncing are another really excellent way to help regulate your nervous system and just get rid of any excess energy and to bring in good energy, because dancing is really therapeutic to your body and it just helps your nervous system acknowledge that it's safe. Another really important factor that is so often overlooked is making sure that you're eating enough protein. This is because neurotransmitters are made from amino acids, and the enzymes that are needed for synthesis are made of protein. So we need to eat more protein, anywhere from 0.5 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. This includes high quality, easy to digest, bioavailable protein. So things like meats, eggs, raw dairy if you tolerate it. But I'm not talking about anything like protein powders or bars or shakes or any of this really strange stuff that's promoted that's just for fad diets. And, this is just really low quality stuff. Even tofu and like a lot of the vegan protein alternatives are just, it's a bunch of crap. Like there's really nothing in there that is healthy or helpful for your body, which is why it's really important to make sure that you are getting high quality sources of protein. So that is one thing that you can do to keep your nervous system regulated, as well as making sure that you are keeping your blood sugar balanced by eating a carb, a fat, and a protein every 3 to 4 hours is ideally going to keep your nervous system regulated. And now kind of jumping back to what I said about grounding. Also, things like mindfulness is incredibly helpful. It's very therapeutic to just be aware of how your body feels, your thoughts, your feelings, any sensations that might arise. This is all extremely helpful for keeping your body and mind present in the moment, rather than being worried about the future or concerned about the past or angry or whatever the case may be. Just trying to find some kind of balance and peace in the present moment is going to help your nervous system stay regulated. Some other free, easy ways to regulate your nervous system would be to watch the sunrise and sunset, preferably outside, making sure that you are getting the light rays in your eyes. No, I do not mean stare directly into the sun. Please, for the love of God, do not do that. Just watch the sunrise and the sunset outside. You can take your shoes off and put your feet on the ground, be in nature, just get outside and breathe some fresh air. Make sure that you're turning your devices off too, because again, as I said earlier, if you are constantly on your devices, this is going to create more dysregulation because of the overstimulation that is happening. So general rule of thumb is turn your device off 2 hours before bedtime. If you can't do that, put on blue blocking shades and download an app on your phone to have like a red light filter to kind of enhance that. And also really paying attention to your lighting in your home is something that's really important. It's another topic for another day because there's a lot that goes into this. But having LED lights on super bright and not getting enough red light in the evening hours is going to impact how your body feels overall. So these are just really simple things that you can do to help regulate your nervous system. It doesn't have to be something that you're doing 24/7. Please do not think that. It's just something that you're going to have to do regularly and making it a habit. And just remembering that this journey is not linear. So there will probably be some discomfort when you start doing this, especially if you've been in a state of nervous system dysregulation for a while. So this can look like maybe you are not able to sit still when you're doing this, or maybe you're having thoughts of, this is stupid, or I don't want to do this. Like, my nervous system's not dysregulated, which I'm sure that we've all had those thoughts at some point, especially once you start hearing this, you might think like, well, that doesn't apply to me because of XYZ. And if you've been having a lot of chronic health issues, I can pretty much guarantee you that you are having some kind of nervous system dysregulation that needs to be addressed. So just be compassionate with yourself and start small and be consistent. So once again, you do not need to practice loads of nervous system work and regulation techniques because that's going to overwhelm your body. And don't focus so much on, is my nervous system regulated right now? Am I doing this right? Because it takes time to reprogram your body and your nervous system to adapt to these things and to be able to benefit from them. It's not something that happens overnight. Again, like with diet, if you change your diet in one day, it's not going to make a difference. Even in a week or a month or a couple months, like sometimes it takes time, especially the longer we have been in a state of dysregulation, the longer it is going to be to get us out of this place of dysregulation. So just be patient with yourself and be compassionate with yourself because this is a lifelong journey and it takes time and practice to really understand these things and to get it right. And I just want to leave a couple of resources for you guys here. A fantastic book on the nervous system and trauma. And even if you don't have trauma or if you feel like you don't have trauma, this book is still relevant. It is called The Body Keeps the Score. It is by Bessel van der Kolk. I believe I am saying that name very incorrectly, so I do apologize, but it is a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to understand more about how what we go through imprints on the nervous system and in the body and the mind. I mean, it is just an incredible resource for anyone wanting to learn more about that. And there's another book that is specifically to complex PTSD. It is called Complex PTSD: From Surviving to Thriving. It is by Pete Walker. I recently read this book and I was just blown away. It is a very difficult read if you have experienced a lot of little traumas or even big traumas throughout your life. I mean, this book was just so eye-opening and it gave a name to some of the things that I had been experiencing. And I mean, it was incredible. And I just highly recommend that you read these books because it is going to open your understanding to how the nervous system plays a role in your body's health and how these emotions can get trapped in your body. So to wrap this episode up, I do want to stress the importance of a regulated nervous system for optimizing your health and reducing symptoms of almost all illness and disease, because a lot of illnesses and diseases do have the root cause of a dysregulated nervous system. So just remembering to be very gentle and compassionate with yourself and to not strive for perfection, because as I said earlier, there are going to be times when your nervous system is dysregulated, and if you're able to healthily express that dysregulation, it is okay as long as your nervous system is flexible enough to bring you back to a place of regulation. Again, this work is not something that happens overnight. It takes time, and really just be compassionate with yourself and be patient, because that is what it is ultimately about. We cannot force our nervous system to be regulated. The more we force, the more it is going to push back against us and to say no. So just remember to take it step by step and to keep learning on your wonderful journey of wellness. Thank you so much for tuning into the Restoring Balance podcast. Today I talked about the two branches of the autonomic nervous system, what a dysregulated nervous system looks like, how nervous system dysregulation happens, how it pertains to digestion, and habits to improve nervous system flexibility. If you enjoyed today's episode and are looking for more holistic health and wellness content about gut and hormone health, be sure to subscribe to my newsletter, where you'll get weekly tips on how to optimize your digestion and receive notifications when I post a new podcast episode, which is every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The link to sign up for my newsletter is in the show notes. Also, if you liked this episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify podcast. Again, I just want to thank you so much for listening to this week's topic. Take care, everyone, and until next time.